What would compel a domestic servant, rejected by mission boards, to journey halfway across the world with only a few shillings and a childlike faith to rescue 100 children from war-torn China? What kind of fire burns in a soul so brightly that it refuses to be extinguished by rejection, poverty, or the brutal realities of war? This is the story of Gladys Aylward, a woman who dared to believe that God's call was louder than human limitations, and whose audacious obedience saved a generation. Imagine a dusty mountain pass in war-torn China, the air thick with the distant rumble of conflict. A small figure, barely 5 feet tall, stands at the head of a line of 100 terrified children. Their eyes, wide with fear and hunger, are fixed on her. Japanese soldiers are closing in. There's no food, no clear path, only treacherous peaks and valleys ahead. Most would give up, most would break, but Gladys Aylward, the woman the Chinese called Ai-weh-deh, the virtuous one, she just kept walking. Her mission? To deliver these orphans to safety no matter the cost. But how did a former housemaid from London end up as the unlikely shepherd of 100 souls in such an impossible situation? To understand the miracle, we must first understand the woman. Gladys May Aylward was born in 1902 in the working-class district of Edmonton, North London. Her early life was, by all accounts, unremarkable. The daughter of a postman, she left school at 14, as was common for girls of her era, and found work as a domestic servant. She polished silver, scrubbed floors, and drew baths for families who lived lives far removed from her own. Her days were mundane, filled with the endless routines of service. Yet, beneath the apron and the obedient smile, a different kind of fire was stirring. A quieter, deeper longing for purpose, for something beyond the predictable rhythm of her existence. She attended a small, vibrant mission hall in her neighborhood, where the sermons spoke of a world much larger than London, a God much grander than the confines of her daily life. It was there, amidst the hymns and fervent prayers, that Gladys felt a persistent, undeniable tug on her heart. A call to China. It was a preposterous notion for a young woman of her background, with no higher education, no wealth, and no connections. But the call, once heard, refused to be silenced. It became the backdrop against which all her future decisions would be made. At 26, after years of wrestling with this inner conviction, Gladys finally applied to the prestigious China Inland Mission. She envisioned herself a missionary, bringing the gospel to the vast, mysterious land of China. She filled out the forms, attended the interviews, her heart pounding with a mixture of hope and trepidation. The response came back swiftly, and it was a crushing blow. Unsuitable. Not academically qualified. Too old. The mission board, observing her lack of formal education and her perceived inability to learn the complex Mandarin language, saw only limitations. They saw a maid, not a missionary. They saw an obstacle, not an opportunity. How many of us, when faced with such a definitive rejection from the very institutions designed to facilitate our dreams, would simply give up? Would pack away the dream, chalk it up to youthful idealism? But Gladys Aylward was not like most people. The no from the mission board did not extinguish her fire. It merely redirected its heat. If they wouldn't send her, she would go herself. This was the first great act of defiance in a life filled with them. Gladys had just £2 in her pocket, enough for a train ticket to a cleaner's job in the north of England. But her eyes were fixed on a different horizon. She began to save. Every penny, every shilling from her meager wages was meticulously put aside. For 2 years, she worked tirelessly, living frugally, turning down small luxuries, all for the singular purpose of reaching China. She ate little, wore old clothes, often going without heat in winter. Her colleagues and friends likely saw her as eccentric, perhaps even foolish. Who leaves a secure job to travel to the other side of the world, alone, without official backing? But Gladys possessed a profound, almost childlike faith. If God calls, He provides. This wasn't merely a platitude for her, it was the bedrock of her existence. By 1932, she had saved enough for a one-way ticket on the Trans-Siberian Railway, the cheapest route to China. This wasn't a cushioned journey. It was an adventure fraught with peril, a testament to her unyielding resolve. With 2 small suitcases, her Bible, and a fierce determination, Gladys boarded the Trans-Siberian Railway. It was an audacious journey for a single woman in the early 1930s. The train rumbled eastward, carrying her through vast, unfamiliar landscapes. The journey itself was a test of faith and endurance. She shared cramped compartments with strangers, soldiers, traders, refugees, their languages and cultures a bewildering mosaic. Food was scarce, comfort non-existent. At one point, she nearly froze to death when the train was stopped for days in the bitter Siberian winter, the heating failing. She narrowly escaped being caught in a skirmish on the Russian border, having to bribe her way across with her last remaining money. Each challenge was a mini cliffhanger, a moment where the story could have ended, but Gladys pressed on. She was traveling to a specific destination in China, the city of Yangcheng, a remote mountainous region in Shanxi province. She had heard of an elderly, seasoned missionary named Jeannie Lawson, an 80-year-old Scot who was running an inn there, known as the Inn of 8 Happinesses. This inn was not simply a place for weary travelers. It was a beacon. It was a place where people would hear the stories of Jesus, where their hearts might be opened. And Gladys, with her unwavering spirit, was destined to become a part of it. What awaited her in Yangcheng was more than she could have ever imagined, a world that would strip away her preconceived notions and rebuild her into the Ai-weh-deh she was destined to become. After weeks of relentless travel and harrowing close calls, Gladys Aylward finally arrived in Yangcheng. The journey itself was a triumph of sheer will, but her real work was just beginning. The remote mountain city was far from the bustling London she knew. The air was thick with the scent of coal fires and unfamiliar spices. The streets teemed with people speaking a language she didn't understand, their faces curious, sometimes wary, as this tiny Western woman navigated their world. Her destination, the Inn of 8 Happinesses. It was a dilapidated, flea-ridden hostel run by Jeannie Lawson, a formidable, eccentric Scottish missionary who had spent decades in China. Jeannie, though initially wary of this young, inexperienced, and somewhat naive Englishwoman, eventually welcomed her. The inn was strategically located, a stopover for mule trains carrying goods through the treacherous mountain passes. Jeannie's vision was simple yet profound: to offer weary travelers a warm bed, a hot meal, and a story from the Bible. Gladys, despite her lack of formal training, threw herself into the work. She scrubbed, cooked, served, and slowly, painstakingly, began to learn Mandarin. The language was a formidable barrier, a complex tapestry of tones and characters that often left her frustrated and in tears. But her determination was unwavering. She learned phrases from the muleteers, from the children, from Jeannie, gradually piecing together the sounds and meanings. This was her mission field, and she would conquer it, one word at a time. One of Gladys's most distinctive ministries began unexpectedly. The Chinese government, in an effort to modernize, had outlawed the ancient practice of foot binding. This brutal tradition, which deformed young girls' feet, was deeply ingrained in the culture. The local mandarin, a high-ranking official, sought a foreign woman to act as a foot inspector, someone who could travel through the villages ensuring compliance with the new law. No Chinese woman would dare challenge the tradition openly. Jeannie was too old. Gladys, the foreign devil who barely spoke their tongue, was the unlikely candidate. It was a dangerous, often thankless job, but Gladys saw it as an open door. This was her opportunity to enter homes, build trust, and share the gospel. Imagine her, this small woman, marching into a village, often accompanied by local guards, to inspect the feet of women and girls, a task that required immense sensitivity and courage. She was met with suspicion, hostility, and sometimes outright resistance, but with time, patience, and a genuine love for the people, she began to win them over. She didn't just inspect feet. She listened to their stories, offered comfort, and shared the good news of Jesus. It was through these journeys that she became known as Ai-weh-deh, the virtuous one, the one who truly cared for their well-being. This was a testament to her unique approach, meeting physical needs as a bridge to spiritual healing. Her reputation as Ai-weh-deh grew not just because of the foot-binding inspections, but through her radical acts of compassion. She adopted her first child, a little girl she named Ninepence, after the amount she paid for her when her mother tried to sell her. Soon, more orphans followed, children discarded or abandoned, finding a home at the Inn of Eight Happinesses. What had started as a hostel was slowly transforming into an orphanage, a sanctuary for the lost and forgotten. The inn, once a noisy hub for muleteers, now echoed with the laughter and cries of children. This was a place where miracles unfolded daily, often in the most unexpected ways. But the challenges were far from over. In 1934, Jeannie Lawson, Gladys's mentor and friend, passed away. Gladys was again alone, left to manage the inn and a growing number of children with no financial support, no mission board, and no earthly safety net. It was a desperate time, a test of her solitary faith. Would the inn close? Would the children be cast back into the streets? This was a critical juncture, a moment of profound uncertainty. But Gladys had learned to lean on a strength far greater than her own, and that strength would soon be tested in ways she could never have imagined. One evening, a desperate man burst into the Inn of Eight Happinesses. He was a prison guard, terrified. There was a riot at the local men's prison. The prisoners, starving and enraged, were out of control, threatening to kill the guards. No one dared go in. But the Mandarin, remembering Gladys's unique courage and influence, sent the guard to fetch Ai-weh-deh. Everyone knew she had a strange authority, a way of reaching the most hardened hearts. Imagine the scene, a small, unassuming woman, barely 5 feet tall, walking into a chaotic prison yard filled with violent, desperate men. The guards, armed, stood outside, trembling. Gladys, unarmed, walked directly into the heart of the riot. She didn't shout. She didn't preach fire and brimstone. She simply spoke, her voice calm yet firm. She reminded them of their humanity, their families, and the justice of God. She appealed to their forgotten dignity. To the astonishment of everyone, the rioting prisoners began to listen. Slowly, one by one, they laid down their makeshift weapons. The riot quelled. Gladys spent days talking with the prisoners, listening to their grievances, offering comfort, and sharing the gospel. She even secured better food for them. This extraordinary act cemented her reputation. She was not just Ai-weh-deh, she was a force of quiet, divine intervention. The Mandarin, deeply impressed, appointed her as his official foot inspector for the region, giving her unprecedented access and authority. But this period of relative peace and growing influence was a deceptive calm before the coming storm. The ominous clouds of war were gathering on China's horizon, threatening to sweep away everything Gladys had built. The biggest test of her faith and her life was yet to come. By the late 1930s, the Sino-Japanese War had escalated into a brutal, all-consuming conflict. China was ravaged, cities were bombed, villages razed, and countless lives shattered. Yangcheng, once a remote mountain haven, soon became a target. The Japanese invasion force advanced relentlessly, bringing destruction and terror in its wake. Gladys and her growing family of orphans, now dozens of children, found themselves directly in the path of the war. Every day brought new threats. Distant artillery fire, aerial bombings, the terrifying rumors of approaching soldiers. The Inn of Eight Happinesses, once a sanctuary, became a perilous refuge. The children were constantly afraid, their small faces etched with anxiety and hunger. Food supplies dwindled. Safety was a fleeting illusion. Gladys knew she couldn't stay. To remain in Yangcheng meant certain death or capture for herself and her precious children. But where could she go? And how could she move 100 children, some as young as 4 years old, across treacherous mountains, through enemy lines, and over a major river, all without resources or military protection? This was the ultimate problem stacking, an impossible task by any human measure. The decision weighed heavily on Gladys, but her faith provided clarity. God had entrusted these children to her. She would not abandon them. In 1938, as the Japanese forces closed in on Yangcheng, Gladys made the courageous, some would say insane decision to lead her 100 orphans on an epic journey to a mission station hundreds of miles away beyond the Yellow River. This journey, which would become known as the March of 100 Children, is the central, most breathtaking arc of her story. It was a testament to her unyielding spirit and God's miraculous provision. Imagine the scene: 100 small bodies, some barely able to walk, with little food, only the clothes on their backs, and one tiny woman to guide them. The route was perilous. Steep mountain trails, rocky passes, dense forests, all watched by enemy patrols. Each step was a risk. Each day brought new challenges, new moments of rising tension. They walked mostly at night, hiding during the day from Japanese warplanes. The sounds of distant gunfire were a constant, terrifying reminder of their vulnerability. Starvation was a relentless enemy. The children cried from hunger and exhaustion. Gladys, ever the resourceful one, found ways to scrounge for food: wild berries, roots, a handful of rice from a sympathetic farmer. She kept their spirits up with songs, stories, and fervent prayers. What everyone gets wrong about such a journey is the sheer unending physical and emotional toll. It wasn't one dramatic escape. It was day after day of grinding endurance, punctuated by moments of acute danger. One harrowing moment came when they encountered a Japanese patrol. They were hiding in a cave, the children's terrified whispers barely muffled. Gladys, thinking quickly, began singing songs. The soldiers, hearing the innocent voices, merely passed by, assuming it was a group of local villagers. A close call, a fleeting moment of relief, a pattern interrupt in the constant fear. But the journey continued to get worse. Many children fell ill, their small bodies succumbing to dysentery and exhaustion. Gladys carried the weakest, often taking turns with the older children, her own strength fading. She developed typhus, a life-threatening illness, yet even in her delirium, she kept her focus on the children, mumbling prayers and directions. Her faith was not a shield against suffering, but a compass through it. The biggest obstacle lay ahead: the Yellow River. It was a vast, raging expanse, swollen by rain, with no bridge or ferry in sight. The children looked at the churning waters with wide, hopeless eyes. It was an impossible barrier. How could they cross? They were trapped, Japanese soldiers behind them, an uncrossable river before them. This was the ultimate cliffhanger, the moment where all hope seemed lost. But Gladys Aylward had faced impossible situations before. She had learned to look beyond human limitations. As Gladys stood on the banks of the mighty Yellow River, facing what seemed like an insurmountable barrier, despair gnawed at her. 100 children, hungry, exhausted, sick, all looking to her for a miracle. The river roared, a symbol of their helplessness. Hours passed. Then, as if an unseen hand had orchestrated it, a Chinese army officer appeared. He looked at the vast number of children, then at the small, determined woman. Moved by their plight, he commandeered several boats from nearby villagers. It was a tense, chaotic crossing. The boats were small, overloaded, and the current strong. But one by one, group by group, Gladys and the children made it to the other side. This was the sudden twist, the resolution to the river cliffhanger, a clear instance of divine intervention. But the journey was far from over. After crossing the river, they still had many miles to go, navigating through unfamiliar and still dangerous territory. The Japanese forces continued their advance, making every step a calculated risk. Gladys, weakened by typhus, pressed on, driven by an unshakable belief that God would see them through. Her own health deteriorated severely. Finally, after weeks of walking, climbing, and hiding, they reached the mission station. The children were safe. She had delivered every single one of them. Gladys, herself at the brink of death, collapsed, her mission fulfilled. She had proven that a life laid down in service, even a rejected life, could accomplish the impossible. Gladys Aylward recovered slowly, her body ravaged but her spirit unbroken. The epic march of the 100 children became a legendary tale, whispered throughout China. She remained in China for many more years, continuing her work with orphans, establishing new homes, and spreading the gospel. Her story began to gain international recognition, becoming the subject of books and eventually a Hollywood film, The Inn of the Sixth Happiness, starring Ingrid Bergman. However, Gladys herself was notoriously uncomfortable with fame. She often disagreed with the romanticized portrayals of her life, insisting that the glory belonged to God alone. She, like many true heroes of faith, despised the spotlight, preferring to focus on the work itself. After the communist takeover of mainland China in 1949, Gladys was forced to leave. Her heart, however, remained in China. Unable to return to the mainland, she eventually settled in Taiwan, Republic of China, in 1958, where she established another orphanage, the Gladys Aylward Children's Home, continuing her lifelong calling until her death in 1970. Her life serves as a profound case study in contrarian faith. While mainstream mission organizations often sought out the highly educated and well-connected, God chose a simple, unpolished maid. She debunked the mainstream view that only the qualified could do great things for God. Her legacy isn't about grand theological treatises or vast institutions, but about transformed lives. She left behind thousands of children who remembered Ai-weh-deh as the woman who gave them hope, family, and faith. Her story is a testament to the domino effect of a single, obedient life. Event A, her call, led to Event B, her journey, led to Event C, the inn, led to Event D, rescuing children, led to Event E, a lasting legacy. She proved that even the smallest story, when surrendered to God, can expand into a universal lesson of immense power. What everyone gets wrong is thinking her strength came from herself. It came from an unshakable reliance on God's strength. This was the hidden truth behind her visible effect. Her story is a powerful reminder that an unwavering spirit, coupled with profound faith, can move mountains, or in her case, lead 100 children across them. Gladys Aylward's journey from a working-class London home to becoming the virtuous one of China is a timeless narrative of courage, compassion, and the extraordinary impact of an ordinary life fully consecrated to God. Her life poses a question to all of us today. What impossible task is God calling you to, and what limitations are you allowing to hold you back? Her life, marked by problem escalation and countless challenges, always found its single big solution in a complete trust in divine provision and guidance. The story of Gladys Aylward is more than just an adventure. It is a blueprint for radical obedience, a testament to the power of one small woman who dared to believe and, in believing, changed the world for hundreds. Lessons from the life of Gladys Aylward. 1. Rejection can be redirection. Gladys was rejected by human institutions, but God opened a different, more powerful path. Don't let human no diminish God's yes. Her fail led to a recover and an ultimate win arc. 2. Radical obedience unlocks miracles. Her willingness to go alone with minimal resources demonstrated an audacious faith that God repeatedly honored with miraculous provision and protection. 3. Cross-cultural ministry requires humility and love. She didn't arrive as a conquering hero, but as a servant. Learning the language, living among the people, and genuinely caring for their needs, like the foot inspections, earned her trust and opened hearts. 4. Impact outweighs qualification. Formal education and qualifications are valuable, but God often uses the willing and devoted, regardless of their resume. Her character focus led to a broader theme of divine capability. 5. Small acts have large consequences. Adopted children, calming a prison riot, inspecting feet. These seemingly small acts built her influence and prepared her for the monumental task of saving 100 children. 6. Faith thrives in adversity. The war, the hunger, the constant danger intensified her reliance on God and revealed the depth of her courage. Her problem escalation led to a collapse of human solutions, but an aftermath of divine intervention. 7. Legacy is in lives, not monuments. Gladys left no grand buildings in her name, but her legacy lives in the generations of children she rescued and the countless lives touched by her example. Her "How It Started versus How It Ended" is a powerful testimony. 8. The impossible is God's arena. Her journey with the 100 children was humanly impossible, yet God provided at every turn, proving that He specializes in what we cannot do alone. She set up the obvious answer.